Seen from the moon, our planet is a beautiful blue marble, and it is clear for all of us that it is the only thing we have to survive. The marble is blue because it is wrapped with a skin that we call nature, a skin with 3 layers: water, land, and air. That skin, it's like a self-regulating Gore-Tex thermostat. That nature has created all life forms of the planet and still today tries to give them food, water, and livable temperatures. And those amongst us who worry about the fact that that skin is going to pieces, they think that there is one big problem: climate change and global warming, and I'm afraid they are missing the point. Because all the layers, the 3 layers of the skin, are going to pieces: water, land, and the global warming atmosphere. Because mankind already today, with all its activities, mainly agriculture, housing, and all the economical activities, is using almost 80% of the fertile fraction of the land. And our effects are already long time, during millennia, eradicating ecosystems and killing people. If you cut open a seagull, what you find is a flying garbage bag full of plastic. Biomass is not renewable. Deforestation to burn trees is nonsense. Even a moron understands that a tree grows back a lot slower than the speed at which it burns in an energy plant. And if we eat lemons and oranges, we probably remember that the commercial for that fruit juice was made in the orchard of an abbey. And we are never connected to the real impact of the production of those fruits. This is 450 square kilometers of greenhouses in the south of Spain, in Almeria. There is no nature anymore. Not only here, but almost nowhere on the planet. If we eat red meat, it needs 5 times more land use per kilocalorie of nutritional value compared to any kind of plant-based meat. There is 3 times more agricultural land in use to produce food for cattle than to produce direct food for people. A kilocalorie of red meat, moreover, needs 20 times more water. And we have drought problems everywhere today. Our agriculture is the biggest space killer on the planet. We increasingly use fertilizer, as this graph shows. And the only thing that agriculture tries to do today, because it is not regulated by farmers, but by the global worldwide distribution sector, the supermarkets, and the shareholders who want to make money by selling more and more food with lower and lower prices, by pushing the farmers to a higher yield in kilograms of food per hectare, created an agriculture that is bankrupt, that is in most of the countries less than 0.5% of the GDP. So economically, it represents really a value that's almost nothing. And it uses in many countries more than half of the surface. And then there is us directly in our housing fabric, in the process that is created by urban designers and architects. More and more countries are suffering from the low density spread out of housing, not about urbanization, but suburbanization. Low density sprawl that creates traffic jams and that almost makes 5 to 20 times bigger the carbon emissions and the waste and the road impact of our housing fabrics. All these things together created a problem that's a lot bigger than global warming. That is that in 10,000 years, since mankind became sedentary, we used so much land that we almost eradicated all the vertebrates. If today you put everything with a skeleton on the land of this planet on a balance to measure its weight, what you are measuring is the vertebrate biomass. And you will see that 65% of the weight is domestic animals and cattle. 32% of the weight is us, mankind, and only 3% of the weight is vertebrate animals in nature. The total biomass of vertebrates on the planet in 10,000 years' time went down from 330 million tons to only 25 million tons. Many people think animals will be dying from global warming, and it's wrong. 80% is already dead, not of the species, but of the numbers of the individuals of those species. And most animals will be eradicated or will be on the verge of extinction by the time global warming really kicks in. So if the only thing we do is stop global warming, what we will do is kill our mother nature without letting her get any kind of fever. She will die without warming up, or with probably only warming up just a little bit. So we are missing the point. A climate neutral eradication and extinction of nature, a murder on nature from a very narrow tunnel vision that tackles only global warming, is a very dangerous form of naivety. Because what we have to do at the first place is to reduce our presence on the planet. We are almost everywhere. And if we are somewhere, it was designed by an architect and an urban designer. The highest biodiversity in Europe and Asia together today is in Chernobyl. These are photos of the city. Because we simply had to leave. That area now, 400 square kilometers, is full of animal and plant life. So we know that the skin of the planet, the coat with the 3 layers, it's not complicated. It can heal itself. It only needs space and time. It needs us to have the courage in each design process to be willing to leave parts of nature alone. I recommend you all to read this text by Richard Heinberg, published by the Post-Carbon Institute in 2017. Why climate change is really not our biggest environmental problem and why technology will not save us. He recognizes the problem of climate change, but he puts it in the bigger perspective. Because we don't want to know what it is about. The first text that announces that deforestation and carbon emissions will totally destroy and bring into unbalance the planetary ecosystem is by Eugène Husard, published in L'Arbre de la Science in 1857. That's a long time ago, and it's a proof of our cognitive dissonance. We simply refuse to reduce our own rights to use land and to consume the planet as it was a waste product. And the second time that something was meaningful was said was by Svante Arrhenius in 1896, when he made a paper on global warming caused by greenhouse gases. He even won the Nobel Prize in 1903. He's not just an average scientific guy, but even then it didn't stick to our brains and to our politicians and to our economy machinery. So there should be a new sequence of priorities. What's going wrong is that there are too many people. The ideal is only 2 to 3 billion people if you want every life form of the planet to have a healthy amount of space to flourish. And those too many people, they use too much land. And they do it because of a crazy belief, a disease called growthism, a belief in the possibility, a naive belief in the possibility of eternal economical growth and the tyranny of the GDP. The consequences are a lot bigger than just carbon dioxide emissions and global warming. It's the acidity of the oceans that kill the phytoplankton. Phytoplankton makes 75% of our oxygen, forests only 25%. It creates an increasing inequality. It still stabilizes the idea of countries with low salaries. And the worst, it creates an extinction of species and it destroys ecosystems. So we should reinvent ourselves from a typology of mankind that drains quality out of the planetary ecosystem into mankind that injects quality and that enlarges, again, the planetary ecosystem. And it will also give us a better life. Look at how many traffic victims in car crashes are there in cities, the white bars, and how many more there are in suburban areas where every life activity is based on transport by car. So if we reduce our footprint, our life will be safer. Here you see the 9th cause of death on the planet is road accidents. 1.3 million people die per year in car crashes. And a car-based environment is a very widespread fragmented land use model. So if we coagulate into higher density centralities in cities and in compact villages on the countryside, we can still choose between a rural life, a green life, an urban life, a cosmopolitan life. So choices should always remain there, but be of better quality and in better balance with the planet. It will help us automatically to lower our carbon emissions and to also tackle the global warming problem. This is 2 times 5 million people. In Atlanta, it's one of the biggest suburban sprawl areas in the world, in the US. Per person, the emission per year for transport is almost 7 tons of carbon dioxide. In Barcelona, the same 5 million people live in a compact urban fabric, and the emissions are 7 times lower per person per year. It's only 1.16 tons. If we stop living in big villas or in small villas in the sprawled areas, you see that the carbon emission of a big villa is 8.4 tons, a small villa 5.2, a terraced house 4.2, and an apartment in the city only 1.29 tons. So compacting our spatial presence will also there have a huge impact on the environment. Because it's an illusion. This is a PhD from the University of Leuven that compared housing typologies, housing units. On the left, a passive villa, super ecological, all the technology that you want, but it's in the middle of nowhere in urban sprawl context, and it needs a lot of transport, a lot of land use. And then you have the 19th century terraced house, not even thermally insulated, which has exactly the same total environmental impact. If you insulate it a little bit, you can live in the center of a village or in the center of a city and be 23% more ecological than a brand new house, a passive house in the middle of nowhere. And we will be happy in other ways, because commuting times, the longer they are, the more you have obese people because they don't have time to do sports. The longer the commuting time, the higher the incidence of divorces. Even in the United States, they know it. Urban sprawl, get fat, stay poor, and die in car crashes. And it's even better for our taxes and our public spending, because a suburban house costs more than the double than an urban house in the center, because of all the roads, the services, the sewage, the garbage collection, the transport needs, and everything else. So it will only bring us prosperity and a greener, more beautiful planet to live in. We even have to reinvent our use of heritage. This is an example of a church on the edge of London that was recycled. It was part of an abbey and of a psychiatrical hospital that was closed down. It became a very beautiful swimming pool. It's a lot better than building a new swimming pool and keeping that church empty with no activity at all. And maybe like this, finally, some young people go to church again. We need to improve our housing. If we go in high density, architecture and the quality of living in those buildings will be more important than ever. This is a beautiful Photoshop by Lacaton and Vassal. It starts from a photo of the case study houses in Los Angeles. It's the lowest photo underneath the image. And then they take away the balconies, and then they take away the floor high windows and reduce them to small windows. And on top, with exactly the same furniture and exactly the same floor plan of that apartment, it looks like poor social housing with the guy in the white suit as somebody who just lost his job. So it's a small difference between an apartment that looks of that one of a multimillionaire and that of a poor guy in a ghetto. And it is those things that architects should look at. If we want to densify our spatial presence, we will need the best architecture and the best urban design ever. But we'll also have to reinvent our relation with urban nature, because the green fields in the city often are this, a park. The river is underneath a park in a concrete tube, and the only species you find back in this park in the autumn is a guy with a yellow leaf blower. But here in Brussels, they did something else. They dug open the river again. They made it meander again. And then they applied rewilding. Part of the green area will be accessible for people, and part will be rewilded and only open to animals and plant life without any maintenance on it. Nature is steering there. And 1 year later, it looked like this. If this can happen in a city, it's not so bad to be forced to densify and to fall back on nature nearby our own homes. The same happened in Sussex, where a dairy farm of 647 hectares went bankrupt. That's a photo on the left. 10 years later, it was a zero intervention farm with rewilding, large vertebrate cattle that was choosing where it was grazing or not. It was a bed and breakfast, an eco farming education system. There was no fertilizer, there was no use of pesticides. And in 10, 20 years time, it became the most profitable farm in the United Kingdom. And at the same time, all the animals that were almost at the verge of extinction came back. It's full of owls and otters and beavers and all kinds of fish, and the water system has been sanitized completely. So we don't have to have an ugly impact on the planet to still be able to survive in a beautiful and healthy way. So the sum of overall of this reasoning is that if we want to survive, half of the planet should be given back and be set aside to wildlife to save ourselves. Therefore, our profession of urban design and architecture is so important. Every project that we do from now on should aim only at one thing. How can we densify and give a small or a big part, whatever the possibilities are, give back something to nature to make it, to help it and to make it able to heal itself.